quite an awesome crowd. Lots of people. Okay, well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. Really appreciate your time. As you probably, if you saw the poster, my passion and what's been my passion for many, many years is what's possible for us in our life. So my background is as a healthcare practitioner. I've been in that field for probably about 40 years. So I'm a herbalist, nutritionist, psychologist, psychotherapist, massage therapist, a few other bits and pieces. And it's just, for me, I guess, like a lot of people, when you get into something in your life, you get into it because of your own experience. And that's really where it started for me too, was that I'd had some health challenges in my life. I grew up on the edge of the outback in Australia, and so nutrition really wasn't a big part of my life back then. And by the time I was a teenager, I left Australia when I was a teenager, I kind of went down this slippery slope, which I guess a few people did back in the old hippie days. And so, you know, all this stuff happened. And when I was 23 or 24, I had a very, very serious car accident. And I went over a big cliff in a combi van. And I died clinically. I was dead. I was in a coma for a long time. And when I came out of my coma, I was completely paralyzed. So the only part of my body that could move, was my eyes. And I was told back then that I would have to have 24-hour care for the rest of my life. And thank you, that's what I did too. I went like this. Well, I didn't do that because I couldn't move my head, but inside, that's what I was doing. I just went, no, this is not, I didn't come here to live like that. There's other things that I need to do in my life, not that. And I need to be able to be alive and active and move and all of that. So I made a decision that I was going to find a way through. And so I did. And that kind of, I'd already started down the health path. I'd started because I had a drug addiction. And so I used my study I started getting into studying nutrition and all kinds of stuff like that. And that was what I used to kind of get through all of that. And so when when this accident happened, it was a natural place for me to go. Obviously, it took a lot more than nutrition to get myself to where I am today. It took incredible willpower. It took a lot of not letting go of the possibility. That's really what it took. I mean, I remember I would lie in the hospital bed and I'd will my finger to move. I mean, I'd spend hours. And, you know, over time, I never gave up. And over time, it happened. And I will never forget the first day that I actually got out of bed. It was very scary. My whole body felt like it was made of jelly. It was just, it was really weird feeling. And every single person in the hospital was there to watch. It was extraordinary for me. Everyone was clapping and cheering, and I was bawling my eyes out. I only stood up for a few seconds, but that was the beginning. And so through a lot of different experiences in my life, I have come to absolutely believe anything is possible, and that we truly are so much more than we believe we are. And somewhere along the way, from the time we were children, we've been taught to shut that down and suppress it. And no, you can't do that. That's not possible, or that's just a dream. No, you've got to do this. You know, all of those messages that we've been getting, they go in there and we don't remember them consciously, but by God, they rule our lives. And so for me, I decided to channel all of this into what's kind of commonly termed holistic health. So my definition of holistic health is very rounded. So yes, health of the physical body. I mean, if we don't have this, and probably how many people have had something debilitating where you know that without this, doesn't matter what else you've got, right? I mean, I know I have, and most people probably have been through something like that. So this is primary. We need to have this be healthy. If, you know, like me, there are things I want to do in my life. There are things I love doing. And I want to be healthy enough and alive enough that I can do that. I can't be of service to other people unless I can serve myself. And so health, this is the foundation. Like, I think of health really as a tree, right? So this here, this is the roots and the trunk, right? This is like, this is where it all starts. But then, in order for everything else to flourish, this needs to be absolutely solidly grounded and healthy. Then we can flourish. Then the branches go out. Then we need financial health. Then we need health of community health, right? Healthy relationships in our lives. We need spiritual health. We need mental and emotional health. We need, you know, a healthy sense of purpose. We need, I mean, health is just so much more than feeling good. And so I want to kind of put all this in perspective and talk about the health of the physical body as the main part of this, because this feeds into all of those things I've just mentioned. Without this, everything else is affected. Our physical health absolutely determines our emotional health and our mental health, and to some extent our, you know, the awareness of our spiritual health. It also affects our the healthy relationships that we have in our life, or not. It affects our ability to actually create financial health for ourselves. I mean, everything is affected when this is not as healthy as it can be. So I just had an interesting conversation before we started tonight about the lack of nutrients in our soils here in New Zealand, and it's becoming very widely known. I know people in farming communities have always known this. I used to manage a dairy farm up in Kaitaia many years ago, and so, you know, I was really aware of what the cows needed to be fed, but most people don't realize that we need that ourselves. So the mineral deficiency in our soils really is the key. And every country in the world has it. There's varying degrees of fertility, and there's varying combinations of minerals that are missing or there, depending on, you know, which part of the world you're looking at. Some places are way more depleted than others. Australian soils are horrendous. So there are certain things that are missing here in New Zealand that we are not getting when we eat the food that's grown in these soils. Because if it's not in the soil, it's not going to be in the food we eat, therefore we're not going to get it. And, you know, most of us are familiar, especially if you're a farmer or, you know, from a farming community, familiar with selenium deficiency, right? How many people know somebody with thyroid problems? Can you put up your hand? How many people know somebody who has thyroid issues? Oh my gosh, just about everyone in the room. So just as a for instance, right? If we are deficient in selenium, we cannot produce adequate thyroid hormone. It's directly resulted. If we don't have enough iodine in our diet, no thyroid hormone. Right? We need cobalt. That's another one that's missing in our soils. I mean, there is so much that we're affected by that is so easily counteracted. And just on the thyroid thingy at the moment, so because it's such an epidemic, another thing that adversely affects thyroid health is chlorinated water. We were having a discussion about that before, right? So chlorine, fluoride, iodine, they're all part of the same family. And if you're drinking chlorinated water, or you're swimming in fluoridated water, chlorinated water, you're drinking it, swimming in it, breathing it in from hot water from a shower, chlorine gas is very toxic. It's affecting your thyroid because it shuts down what's called the receptors in the thyroid gland from absorbing the minerals that it needs to create thyroid hormone. I mean, such a simple thing. Who would have thought? So everything that happens in the human body, like if we were to, and I'm way simplifying this, but if we were to take the physicality of this and take it right down to its essence, basically we need amino acids, minerals, and fat. That's really what we need, right? Those three things make up pretty much everything in our body. Minerals are the key. They're the foundation, along with amino acids. Absolute foundation, because they are what make everything happen in the body. And depending on whose research you're reading at what particular time, we need anywhere from 70 to 84 minerals a day in our bodies. And I guarantee probably none of us get that. I remember at school in science class we had the periodic table. Anyone remember the periodic table? Yes. That's all the minerals that we need in our bodies on a daily basis. Amazing, huh? And yet, commercially, what's put back into the soil? NPK, right? That's it. I mean, yes, people that are more conscious of what's needed definitely put back more than that. But not truly what we need for optimum foundational health. So, again, if we take our bodies down to its absolute simplicity, Every single thing that happens in our body, from our neurons firing to our digestive juices flowing to our heart beating to you name it, everything that happens in the human body is sparked off by these little things called enzymes. They are what run our body, right? What feed our enzymes are what? Minerals. Yep, minerals. So without them, we are coming out of the gate absolutely compromised from day one. And then we wonder why our bodies aren't working properly. Because those little spark plugs can't fire. They don't have the tool that's going to help them fire. So we need to find a good source of bioavailable minerals. So minerals that are available to our bodies to be used properly. And there's a difference. I mean, you wouldn't take an iron frying pan and scrape off the iron and eat it to get your iron, right? I mean, there's a difference. That's not bioavailable iron. That's definitely what we call a heavy metal, toxic form of that iron. So minerals come in different forms. And a bioavailable form of mineral is actually water soluble. It does not build up in the body, not like the toxic ones. And in fact, what happens in our body is that when we absorb heavy metals into our body, which we all have, because we breathe them in the air, we drink them in the water, we absorb them through our skin, right? A lot of it comes through our food. So we're getting it all the time. If we take medication, we're getting it every day, because it's pretty much in every medication. And what happens is that those heavy metals in our body become highly toxic to our system, create massive amounts of inflammation in our body, and they displace the mineral that should be there. So they lodge in different areas of our body. Where there is a mineral deficiency, there's a space, right? Nature abhors a vacuum, right? It's got to fill it up. So if you have a deficiency of a mineral in your body and you're absorbing heavy metals, guess what's going to fill up that space? Yep. And so, now what we're seeing is that heavy metal toxicity is at the root cause of a lot of different degenerative conditions. A big part of it is because it causes massive amounts of inflammation. And we know that an inflammatory response in the body is, it's a natural thing. That's part of how the body heals itself. But when you get too much of it, it does the opposite. It starts breaking down the body. So, one of the things that's now highly recognized is that high levels of inflammation in the body are actually at the foundation of pretty much every degenerative condition that we know. And there's a lot of things that cause inflammation. That's one of them. So the reason that I'm saying that is because it's easily fixed. When we take in bioavailable minerals, they will move in and they will actually get rid of the toxic minerals in our body. They act as what we call chelation agents. So they go in and they will grab them and pull them out into our urinary tract and into our bowel and other parts of our body through our lymphatic system so that our bodies can get rid of it. Lots of reasons why we need minerals. Brain function. Huge part of brain function. So in order for our brains to function properly, we need minerals. Heavy metal toxicity is a huge factor in dementia and Alzheimer's, as is something called visceral fat toxicity. So, visceral fat is the fat that you don't see, right? It's not this stuff. It's the fat that's inside our bodies. Ever heard of fatty liver? Yeah, visceral fat. So it starts building up here behind the stomach wall, and it spreads. It's like a cancer. It goes and it travels and it spreads and it recreates itself as it goes. It wraps itself around our organs. It streaks through our muscle fibers, our blood vessels. I mean, it is insidious. And it has a direct implication to Alzheimer's disease. Because one of the things it does is that it blocks the body's actual ability to function at a healthy level. It creates toxic chemicals in the body, it creates toxic hormones in the body, and shuts down our own. So that, that's another piece. And I don't really want to keep going down that track. I could do a whole day on that stuff. But really, I want to get back to what can we do, as a whole. So once we are fed adequately with minerals specifically, and amino acids also, which is adequate protein, that's broken down properly so we can absorb it. Most people don't have that. Most people, even though we actually eat tremendous amounts of protein in this country, most people are actually protein deficient because we don't break it down properly. Therefore, we're not getting it, and it ends up as waste products in our colon. And there's a very simple reason for that. One is we don't chew our food properly. That's where it starts. Very few people chew their food properly. And then, of course, a lot of people, a very high percentage of the population has digestive problems of one kind or another, which means that we're not producing enough enzymes in our stomach, we're not producing enough hydrochloric acid, etc., etc. And so we just end up with this mess called the human body, which really isn't a mess, it's a miracle. It's amazing. So simple ways of starting to bring this back. What happens in our bodies when we are nutritionally deficient affect our mental and emotional well-being. Absolutely across the board. So when we don't, for instance, we don't eat enough fresh vegetables, we can't produce enough serotonin. So serotonin is one of the chemicals that our bodies naturally produce that make us feel good, right? Serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, all of those things, right? So that's one way that we can start, one very simple way that we can start is to have a lot more fresh organic vegetables in our diet. Minerals. Without adequate minerals, here we go back to the minerals again. Without adequate minerals, our bodies cannot produce those chemical hormones as well. So we cannot produce enough serotonin, dopamine, blah, blah, blah. Our brains can't function properly. Our brain needs fat, good fat. So we have to have good fat in our diet. Otherwise, we literally can't feed our brain, and we can't create hormones. Two very important things. Our brain is made up primarily of fat. Also minerals, also amino acids. So we come back to those primary three again. So all of these pieces kind of combine to have us feel like, oh my gosh, I've got energy. I actually feel happy. I feel joyful. I feel like actually doing something. I feel like making a difference in somebody's life. I feel like, having an adventure. Whatever it is. It all comes back to the health of our human body. It's amazing. So, what is possible for our life? Because if we think about, science tells us that every cell in our body actually renews itself, every 7 years. I mean, cells renew themselves at different times, but after 7 years, basically we've got a new body. So why do we age? If that's the case, what's this aging thing all about? It's because we're not renewing ourselves properly, healthily. That's why. Because what gets renewed is our cells that are actually not healthy. And so from that you get the next generation, which is even more unhealthy, and from that, and so on and so forth. So possibility. It's what lights me up. And I don't think there is any limit on our age when it comes to possibility and what's possible for our life. And I've had the privilege of actually having elderly friends who were such an inspiration to me. I had a really good friend in Auckland who was still writing his probably 25th book when he was 96. Still teaching yoga when he was 96. He was amazing. I mean, people like that just so inspire me that I know I don't have to be, 86 or 96 and hooked up to a machine in a hospital room. I know there's other ways. There's a different life. There's another life. So, this thing called possibility, each one of us came here for a very specific purpose. Most of us have forgotten. We knew that when we were very little. Remember? How many remember dreaming as a kid? I mean, anything was possible, right? You could be a rocket ship owner, driver, whatever. You could be anything. What happened to that? We lose that sense of possibility. And yet it's all still there. I mean, I don't want to drive a rocket ship, but, it's still there. That possibility is still there. We just become so focused on getting by. We have to get by. We have to make a living. We have to, be there for the kids. We have to, and of course we have to, but, it just kind of does this. So there's a couple of things that I made a decision about. Actually, my husband and I together made a decision about. One was that we wouldn't own a television set. Not that, I love a good movie any day, but I really have no interest in television. The main thing I wanted to avoid was watching the news. And one of the things that, I've read some really, really fascinating research about how we are physically affected by what impacts us through our day-to-day life. I mean, it just, even as an observer, we know what people go through in traumatic situations, right? How it affects us, physically affects us. But do we stop to think about, we are actually, every time we watch the news, we are being deeply traumatized and we don't even realize it. And some of the research that I've read, it's amazing what happens in our bodies physically. They've hooked people up to computers and actually tracked what has happened in the human body when people have been exposed just to watching 1 hour of world news. It's extraordinary. The stress on our system, the toxic chemicals that are created in our system, the amount of inflammation that is catalyzed in our bodies just from that is extraordinary. So I'm kind of careful about what I expose myself to. I won't watch a movie that has any violence in it because I know what it feels like, and I'm kind of hypersensitive to stuff like that, and I know not everybody is, but I can physically feel it. I get depressed, I get upset. I mean, I literally physically feel it when I watch something like that, and I don't want that in my life. So all of these pieces, like, for me, I call it living my life on purpose. So every choice we make is a choice. We are choosing every second of every day. We're making choices all the time. We're choosing what we think, believe it or not. We're choosing how we feel. We're choosing, there's always the conscious choice of what am I going to do today and, all of that kind of thing. But we are constantly making choices all the time. We choose absolutely everything in our life, whether we're conscious of it or not. And a lot of it is unconscious. About 95% of it actually is unconscious. The thing about that is, it's a choice. So we can change it. We can change it. We can make a different choice. We can actually choose to be happy. What a concept. We can choose how we feel. That's amazing. I've gone through times of depression where it feels overwhelming. Like I have no control over it. It's just, this is just how I feel. And yet what I found was that actually was not true. It was a story that I believed, but it wasn't true. It takes a lot. It takes a lot of willpower, and it takes commitment to actually pull out of it, but it's possible. And then when you add the fact that nutritional deficiency is actually at the foundation of depression, that's another way that we can start filling in those gaps. I've seen mineral supplementation actually clear up depression, all kinds of mental imbalances, attention deficit disorders in children. It's extraordinary, truly extraordinary. A simple thing like that. It's amazing.